And Pakistan declares water as a red line in a new threat aimed at India. Kashmir's on the table too, as Islamabad attempts to take two long-running disputes with New Delhi to European partners. Hello and welcome. You're watching RT India with me, Aditi Mishra, live from New Delhi. From Kremlin laundromat to sanctions dodger, Donald Trump's trade advisor has accused India of helping China evade tariffs that ultimately left Uncle Sam out of pocket.
For years, the great trans-shipment scam has let communist China launder its exports. A new report from my office details how goods are being trans-shipped through more than 40 countries to dodge US tariffs, costing countless American jobs and billions in revenue. With new tools like our AI detective border, we're putting a stop to it.
So basically, the Office of Peter Navarro has published a report titled The Great Trans-Shipment Scam, warning that a growing network of countries are helping China reroute their goods around US tariffs and US sanctions that have been imposed on China. It says that products from China are relabeled and repackaged in third countries before actually being introduced into the American market. Now, the report estimates the value of these trans-shipped goods between $40 to $303 billion annually, and separately estimates the loss in US tariff revenue between $19 to $26 billion annually. Again, a total of 40 countries have been mentioned in this report, calling them elevated risks, which includes countries like Mexico, Canada, several countries from the European Union, India, South Korea, and Japan, calling them part of what the report calls China's shadow transshipment network.
On that strict standard, Office of Trade and Economic Analysis estimates that approximately $67 billion in US-bound goods were transshipped from China through the top hubs, Mexico, India, and Vietnam in 2025, producing an estimated $28 billion in lost tariff revenue.
Now, what stands out in this report is a section that is squarely aimed at India. The report calls the Indian cities of Pune, the state of Gujarat, and then again the city of Chennai as ugly sister cities, linking them with American cities like Cincinnati, Dayton, and Columbus, not through civic partnerships, but through American jobs that the report says are unfairly lost due to unjust trade. It says that India's Pune, Gujarat, and Chennai production belt is producing pumps and compressors that would have instead benefited the supply chains and production belts of those three American cities. The report then going forward goes on to explain how exactly this network of transshipment works and what the US administration is doing in order to put a halt to it. It starts with Chinese goods passing through third countries for light processing, relabeling, or repackaging in a way giving a sense that their country of origin is not China but some other country. Meanwhile, the goods in substance remain Chinese. To catch this, the US administration has said that they are going to introduce an AI-enabled system which is meant to flag high-risk shipments through routing histories, ownership checks, and even port checks in order to determine their country of origin. Now, this report also falls into a very familiar pattern that we've seen over the last few months. It was authored by the Office of Peter Navarro, who happens to be the trade advisor to the US President Donald Trump. Now, Mr. Navarro in recent months has time and again targeted India in a lot of his verbal comments against India over India's defense and energy relationship with Russia. He has called India the Maharaja of tariffs. He has labeled India as the laundromat of Kremlin over its energy ties with Russia, and has even called its defense ties as strategic freeloading. When a backlash when he faced some backlash on the internet over the comments that were made by him. He last week said reporters not to individually target him because that is not how problems are solved in the United States of America. So the pattern is very hard to miss. The United States and the Trump administration has time and again targeted India in the last few months over its ties with Russia. And now we see that on the topic of China and tariffs being imposed on China, India is yet again being targeted, and that too at a time when crucial negotiations around the US-India trade deal are still ongoing.
We spoke to former Indian diplomat Anil Trigunyat on India's approach to growing pressure from the US. He said that New Delhi remains guided by strategic autonomy and putting national interest first. Listen in.
India has not thought of containment of China or be a counterweight to China for anybody. We have our own foreign policy. We believe in strategic autonomy. We are not a banana republic that any country would like to use it in one way and we'll do that. I don't think we are doing that. It is clearly visible. As per India's stand, the foreign policy that we have followed in the past decade or so is very clearly outlined that India looks for its own interests. I mean, we are not, whether it's China or whether it's Russia or for that matter, United States, it doesn't matter. What matters most is our own national interest, our foreign policy interests. And if they do not align with somebody, we'll go our way. India and China do have their problems. At the same time, we follow this policy of competition with cooperation with China. And both sides have understood their own limitations with regard to forcing one another or China trying to, create the hegemonistic attitude towards India. That did not work out. So China also understands that very well, that up to what point can they stretch and beyond which it's not possible. So I think that the pressures are always there from different countries, but that doesn't mean that you buckle under pressure. At least India doesn't.
Moscow and New Delhi look set to open a new chapter in energy ties. From simply trading oil and gas to attracting Indian investment and expanding Russia's footprint with companies in the Indian market. It's a push Moscow has said reflects the depth of a special strategic partnership.
Russia is interested in attracting Indian investment to the Russian oil and gas sector, as well as in developing a distribution network with the participation of Russian companies in India. Relations between the two countries have the nature of a strategic partnership, and their leaders are in constant contact. Mutually beneficial cooperation in oil and gas projects is promoted actively.
For years, India and Russia's energy ties have followed the simple formula of supply and demand. But that's all about to evolve, with Moscow opening the door to Indian investment in its oil and gas sectors. For New Delhi, Russia will become much more than just a reliable source. It will have a direct stake in production and provide a long-term boost for energy security. While heavily dependent on imports and exposed to Middle East disruptions right now, India sees Russian crude as a safe bet for the future. For Moscow, there are plenty of pros too. Additional capacity will boost key sectors and there will be greater access to one of its biggest customers in recent years. The groundwork is already in place. Indian companies, they hold stakes in Russian oil fields, while Russian investment is already present in India's refining and retail sector. Now, India has always put affordability and availability at the forefront of its energy policy. America has claimed that it shares those ideals with New Delhi time and time again, but it has been aggressive in trying to show it. Washington's role in India's energy equation has been confusing at best, from encouraging New Delhi to buy Russian oil to pressuring it to stop. And the confusion, it does not just end there. The United States has now claimed that the primary goal of its war against Iran was to keep crude prices down, at least for Americans. Also, it aimed to stop Tehran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. Now, the conflict has so far had the opposite effect, with prices fluctuating above and around the $100 mark. So has Washington's pressure on India over Russian oil ended up reinforcing the very partnership that it sought to weaken? Well, to understand why affordability and energy security, they continue to shape India's decision, I spoke to former Indian Commerce Secretary Ajay Dua.
Every country in the world should be allowed to take its own decision with matters which are internal. And energy security is nowadays one right in front. That's one of the foremost concerns of most countries, and that includes India. So we have to be allowed to take our own decision. And I would say, by and large, in the last few years, we have not been compelled by anyone to take a decision in a different manner. And if anyone has tried it, we have resisted it and gone the way we thought it is best for us.
Mr. Dua, when energy affordability and geopolitics they collide, which should take precedence for an import-dependent economy like India? And why can't the West understand this?
Geopolitics is something which you cannot ignore. Even if we want that only energy security should be in the foremost, fact of the matter is we have to be realistic. What is happening around the world? How is the global politics evolving? How are the relationships between the countries? Those would always remain pertinent factors and factors which have to be reckoned with, both in trade as well as security matters of all kinds, including energy.
So does Washington have a realistic alternative for India if it wants New Delhi to maybe reduce Russian oil imports? Will it try to match it for the price?
Washington has its own interests, which it used to look at the collective interests with its allies, with its associates, with its partners. Increasingly, it is not bothered about what happens elsewhere. Its own interests are foremost, and it leaves it to others to fend for themselves. And that's what it is talking about right now. It's not talking about at what price. It will certainly want to sell us more gas, sell us more crude oil, which is produced in the United States or with some of its allies. But it's not bothered what are the rates, whether India can afford it or not, whether those countries where it thinks India should be buying from do they have the stocks, and are they willing to match the prices which India could get from elsewhere, including Russia.
Mr. Dua, is America asking its partners to bear an energy cost that it itself is unwilling to impose on its own consumers?
Now there are no partners forever as far as the US is concerned. US is looking at its own interests, leaving others, including its ex-allies, to fend for themselves. If they are coming handy for the US kind of will reciprocate for the usage of those countries to it, but otherwise it's letting each country fend for himself. So that includes India, saying if it doesn't want to support Russia, the US, that's why it's named 5 countries which are the highest buyers of crude oil. That includes China, India, Hungary and towards Slovakia and Azerbaijan. But it is saying that if you continue to buy the Russian oil, you'll be ready for their duty once the President of the United States gets empowered, if the House of Representatives passes the bill which the Senate has approved. I think it's coming before the US House of Representatives on the 31st of August, very soon, in about 2 weeks' time.
Mr. Dua, that brings me to my final question here. Are developing economies being forced to choose between affordable energy and geopolitical alignment?
Geopolitics is not just strategic. Geopolitics is also economic, commercial, worrying about today, not just today, the future. All kinds of things together make it geopolitics. So there's nothing like geopolitics versus this or geopolitics. Or the geopolitics is the global politics at any point of time. And politics don't get determined merely by who is the stronger partner in terms of military, or it also means in all other leverages which it has, how is it placed, and that's how it's determining the geopolitics of the world.
Thank you, Mr. Dua, for giving us those insights.
Thank you.
And it is against the backdrop of Washington's own contradictions that 36% of Indians now see Russia and not the US as India's most important ally. This new survey is particularly telling, with an anti-Russia campaign being driven by many in the West over the Ukraine conflict. For many in India, however, Moscow's long-standing strategic ties and its pragmatic energy partnership appears to carry greater weight. Russia's foreign minister has called out European elites for believing that they are above international law. Sergei Lavrov warned that there will be consequences for European nations declaring vessels shadow fleets and seizing commercial goods.
The European Union came up with this concept a long time ago. It does not appear in any document. The European Union decided to apply its own law, if one can call the illegal decisions of Brussels law, in order to limit Russia's ability to earn money on global markets. They introduced, in essence, a ban on trade and energy resources from the Russian Federation. And all vessels that do not obey the European Union under any flag have been declared a shadow fleet. This is a very dangerous path because they are declaring that their decisions stand above international law. They have allowed themselves not only to stop and inspect ships, but also to seize cargo and sell it in order to generate some revenue, and to transfer that revenue to Ukraine so that it can continue to strengthen its Nazi regime. The President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, very clearly and measuredly stated that we will respond to this banditry, to this piracy in a mirror-like manner. We will choose the targets ourselves. The targets will be vessels that operate in the interests of countries that have proclaimed banditry and piracy as their official policy.
RT correspondent Isabella Bloomberg looks at how the EU's unilateral action and double standards are about to boomerang straight back at the bloc.
For years, Europe has been building a maritime blacklist under the guise of sanctions, stopping ships, seizing cargo, and calling it enforcement. Now, Moscow's response couldn't be any clearer. If these are the rules that Brussels has installed, then apply them to everyone.
We see that the authorities of some countries, in violation of international maritime law, are attempting to restrict the movement of our economic operators' vessels. And, I emphasise, these are peaceful vessels. And recently they even considered seizing our vessels and selling the property they stole from us. This, of course, is nothing less than piracy and robbery. And if this begins to materialise, we will be forced to respond in kind, and not necessarily in the waters where they plan to raid our ships and vessels, but in areas where we ourselves deem it necessary and appropriate.
And Russia's Pacific Fleet commander says the forces to back that promise are already at sea.
At the same time, Western states are actively using vessels flying the flags of third countries to transport cargo for their own benefit. In essence, this is their shadow fleet. We have the forces required to inspect and detain vessels belonging to unfriendly states, as well as their shadow fleet.
And to understand why, one must rewind to Brussels' own definition of what makes a fleet shadow. Here we see two main conditions. The first, the absence of Western insurance. And the second, ownership or registration outside the European Union or the G7.
Russia's shadow fleet, bringing the threat to light. Under this definition, a shadow fleet comprises all vessels that simultaneously meet two conditions. 1. They lack Western insurance and rely instead on providers outside the International Group of Protection and Indemnity Clubs. And 2. They belong to companies from non-EU G7 countries.
Read that again. A foreign flag, non-Western insurance, and non-Western ownership. Except there's an inconvenient problem for Brussels.
By the UN's own count, up to half of the world's commercial tonnage sails under the flags of three relatively small countries: Liberia, Panama, and the Marshall Islands.
Why? Well, certainly not for security, but for cost. Cheaper registration fees, lighter taxes, and freedom from the EU's labour rules or union wages.
The European Maritime Maritime Safety Agency disclosed in a 2025 report that more than a third of the ships owned by EU-based companies actually sailed under the flag of an EU member state. So, by the EU's own definition, a significant portion of its cargo ships are technically a shadow fleet.
But of course, Brussels has never applied its own doctrine to its own vessels, not once. Instead, it keeps pointing the finger at Russia.
We will continue targeting the shadow fleet.
The shadow fleet, our Operation Irini, has changed the rules of engagement and has now started to board the ships as well.
The double standard here is hard to miss. The same loopholes that Europe's own shipping giants use to stay cheap. The EU Council has even gone as far as to publish guidance on how to identify and intercept Russia's supposed shadow fleet. This rhetoric has expanded into a full-fledged campaign. Since 2022, European states have been systematically targeting Russian-linked vessels. This year alone, reports show 9 suspected tankers seized by France, Germany, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. But here's the crucial point. Almost none of it happened in EU territorial waters, and none of it carries a UN mandate. And now, it's gone far beyond detention.
European Commission officials confirmed, among EU diplomats, that a fresh round of sanctions against Moscow would include a provision to allow member states to sell crude oil and other commodities seized from Russia's shadow fleet of tankers, which it is using to evade a G7 oil price cap.
So here we see this full cycle, detention, becoming confiscation, now turning into European commerce. Brussels has established its precedent, and Moscow's answer is simple. Any ship, flag or water that rules now runs both ways.
Pakistan's Prime Minister has drawn a red line for India on the eve of his country's Independence Day. Shehbaz Sharif warned of a direct response under the remit of the 1960 Indus Water Treaty, which New Delhi has placed in abeyance.
Every drop of water is our red line. If India does not stay on the right path, we will directly respond. If anyone challenges Pakistan's sovereignty, they will receive an even stronger reply than in May 2025.
Joining me now is RT India correspondent Rujita Tete. Rujita, how is Sharif's statement being viewed in India?
Now, Sharif was speaking in Islamabad on the eve of Pakistan's 88th Independence Day, and he was also inaugurating a monument that is built to mark Islamabad's what they call is a triumph over India in their conflict that happened last year. Now, they have also termed India as enemy of peace, and this comes over the Indus Waters Treaty. And they have also given a warning that the direct response would be expected by India if this course is not reversed. Now, India had placed this treaty under suspension following the Pahalgam terror attack that happened last year, and India also says that it will remain suspended until Pakistan ends its support to the counter-border terrorism that actually happens. Now, Pakistan, on the other hand, is leaning on a May 15th supplementary award by the Permanent Court of Arbitration in Kishanganga and Rattle case, which involves 2 hydroelectric projects in Jammu and Kashmir. Now, Pakistan says that this award would act as a vindication of its position because they believe that this treaty gives India more control over the western rivers. However, India calls this ruling illegal under the treaty's own mechanism. Now, this kind of pressure that Islamabad is building is not something new, but what is new in this case is the setting that there is around. Now, Sharif's fresh threats are being followed by the Pakistan signing an agreement which is the Mecca Joint Defense Agreement with Saudi Arabia and Turkey. And for the very first time, a NATO member, which is Turkey, is having a formal defense agreement with Pakistan, and this gives Pakistan a bigger seat at this table. So definitely the European capitals are also paying more attention to what Sharif would now be saying. Now, Europe is already wading in.
I was happy to have this opportunity to discuss other regional issues ranging from Jammu Kashmir to Afghanistan, and of course the challenging relationship with that country.
Now, in fact, Norway's foreign minister was in Islamabad this week and also met with Pakistan's deputy prime minister. Now, on the other hand, India treats this treaty as bilateral as it treats the Jammu Kashmir issue. However, Pakistan does not view both of these issues as bilateral issues because they have brought up these issues with Organization of Islamic Cooperation, with China, and now also with the EU. In fact, on June 1st this year, at the 8th round of the EU-Pakistan strategic dialogue that happened in Islamabad, Pakistan's foreign minister also raised questions about India's Operation Sindoor as well as on the Kashmir issue. And their EU foreign policy chief was also present. Now, India also hit back in the same month, and Foreign Ministry spokesperson Randhir Jaiswal said that Jammu Kashmir and Ladakh are integral and unalienable part of India, and those with no locus standi should not comment on these matters. Now, India is yet to formally issue a statement on Norway's foreign minister or on Sharif's latest statement as of yet. There is a briefing that is going to happen today, and India will follow up.
Well, thank you, Ruchita, for those updates. We spoke to journalist Padma Rao Sundarji, who argues that nations with a poor track record often posture as global human rights champions.
You know, this happens all the time. I mean, the countries that have had the history of violation of human rights, who have been the biggest violators of human rights, are always the biggest champions of in their own countries. Are always the biggest champions of human rights in other countries. We've seen that. We've seen that overall in how the West is in Afghanistan, how the West is in. I mean, you know, I could give you a long list of individual offences and violations by each country, but we won't go down that road here. Let it suffice to say that at the root of all this is economic superiority and economic might. And every time there is a chink in the armor, every time there's a slight sign of vulnerability, that shows up, and they start, criticizing or preaching human rights to other countries. Now, there's nothing wrong with holding, dialogue with governments and giving a government your opinion in closed-door meetings or in bilateral meetings or whatever. But this is a statement that's very obviously, as you said rightly, very obviously has a motive. And the motive seems to be really two things. One is to exploit what they see as a chink in India's, seeming invincibility on the question of Jammu and Kashmir. And they're wrong because they're misreading the Indian public opinion.
A tunnel under construction at a hydropower project in India's northern state of Uttarakhand has collapsed, leaving 7 workers dead and several injured. According to officials, a sudden rush of water and debris caused the structure to collapse. 22 workers were believed to be inside at that time. 12 have been rescued, in fact, while 3 still remain missing, according to the state's chief minister. Army personnel, along with the state and national response teams, they have been drafted to help with rescue efforts. Now to the Middle East, where renewed clashes have reportedly erupted in Yemen between Saudi-backed forces and the Houthis. Gunfight has been reported in the port city of Al-Mokha, with fighting even intensifying. The UN Secretary General's Special Envoy has warned that the dispute could spill beyond Yemen and engulf the wider region. The Houthis stated that they targeted Saudi military position, weapons depot, and even the command centers. The group has vowed to keep striking threats. Going around the globe now for a quick look at other stories happening this Friday. Starting in Latin America, where the death toll from Colombia's devastating earthquake earlier this week has risen to at least 281. Hundreds of people are still reported missing, with rescuers still combing through rubble. The 7.4 magnitude quake damaged thousands of buildings and left tens of thousands of people displaced. In the city of Cali, Residents have been queuing up to donate blood as communities unite to help in any way that they can. Record-breaking rain has battered Japan's Chiba prefecture. Now, buildings, roads and infrastructure have been submerged, leaving thousands of people without power. At least 4 people have died, according to local authorities. Public transport has been severely disrupted, with hundreds and thousands left stranded at railway stations and airports. The rain has eased, but more downpours are forecast. As India approaches its 80th Independence Day, every state has come alive with the spirit of unity under the Har Ghar Tiranga campaign. From bustling streets to serene waters, the tricolour is being proudly waved across the country, celebrating the Tiranga as a symbol of India's honour and pride. We leave you with these stunning images of beauty and pride.